On this episode of The Honest Mechanic, we're going to be wrenching on some Yamaha. Which one? Well, on the right, we've got my classic Big Bear. This is the one you guys have seen many times. I've done some pretty cool videos on it. And on my left, we've got my father-in-law's Rhino. This is a 700. And both of these bikes are making some similar noises. They're both crunching as we move them. Both, I think, have been diagnosed within a little bit. So, I'm going to leave it to a toss-up with, of course, your good old-fashioned Canadian loonie. We're going to flip a coin, and that is going to determine which one we're working on. So if it's heads, we're going to work on the Rhino, and if it's tails, we're going to work on the Big Bear. All right, so let's find out what we got. And heads it is. I guess we're working on the Rhino. Stick around. Alright, so we got the Rhino up in the air, and the issue we have at hand right now is the rear axles are making some noise. It's kind of hard to tell when you're just up in the air here and there's no load on anything, but if you roll this wheel and you listen really carefully, it's actually going to be on the opposite side. You hear it better on this side. So let's roll this wheel and see what we hear, or I guess hear what we hear. Right there, you hear that click right at the end? It's kind of faint, but when you're driving it with some weight on the wheels and you do a sharp turn, you can really hear it crunching. So we're gonna replace the axles. We got two of them sitting right over here. And the first thing we need to do for that is pull the wheel. I really do love these wheels, but two of these, not sure which ones, are holding this plastic cover that gives me access to the lug nuts. And these are these look real as well, but I don't think they really are bead locks. But they do a good imitation. So let's choose this guy. Is it this one? No, that's plastic. That's plastic. Gotta be this guy. Aha! So I got one. So if that's the case, we'll go straight across. Should be that one, right? Yeah, got it. Okay, that's good. There's only two. I'm gonna remove this cover and zip this wheel off. And just like that. Now would be a good time to inspect your brakes too and remove all the sticks that you've collected over the years. Like this one, for example. Bye-bye. So we're still doing good with brakes. Pretty sure I did the brakes not too long ago on that. So now we're going to remove the A-arms. I'm going to have to decipher which one is going to be easiest. Probably going to remove it right from here and remove this nice large axle nut with this new cotter pin. I'm going to replace that with a new cotter pin, because you should never reuse cotter pins because they're only meant to be used once. And of course, they're a safety item. So just throw them out, put some new ones in. They're pretty inexpensive. So let's start by maybe breaking this free so we know that's going to be okay. And then zipping it off right here, moving the caliper aside. All right, so in case you were wondering, this is an 1.25 inch nut, at least on this one. I'm not sure what your bike's going to have, but this one's 1.25 inch. And it came off fairly easily with a giant impact, of course. You'd be able to do this with a big bar as well if you were to lock the brakes or have somebody holding the brakes. But now we're going to remove the caliper, pull these off. There we go. There's the one. And then of course this lower one I have to use a wrench to get in on the nut, or sorry, the bolt. Oh boy, that's a tight one. Come on, break free. Wow. Okay. Wait a minute. Am I doing this? Yeah, that was silly. I was going the wrong way. Look at that. Yeah. I messed that up. I'll owe up to it. Ding! Something I like to do as well is keep a nice little tie down or some kind of a bungee cord wrapped around the caliper so that we're not hanging it from this hose. Not that it's very heavy, but I'd rather not do it that way. So now we're going to zip these off, and look at that. There's actually grease fittings on these two things, on these two pins. Not something you see very often anymore on a newer machine. Mind you, sorry, this is a 2010. Not super new, but it's still nice to see that you can grease it. And you can ask anyone who knows me. I love grease. Because grease loves machines, and machines love grease as well. If you grease your stuff, I can guarantee you it will last a lot longer. Anyways, getting back to this, we'll zip these two bolts off. So now this whole hub assembly should just come right out. Just like that. There's one. Now is a good time to take a look at your seals and your bearings as well. I've replaced the bearings on this very recently, which is why I know that these axles must be this cause of the problem. Well, there's a little bit of play there. Not sure if you guys can see it in the camera. Not sure if you see that, but I'm wiggling it back and forth here, and I've got no movement over here. So that tells me that there's some wear inside these CV joints, which is why we're replacing them. So now at this point, it's actually a simple, just a straight back tug like this, and it should pop right out of that axle holder. There's a little key in here inside the rear end, or the differential, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to come right out. It should have no issues. If you're having a trouble with this, or if you find it is really stuck, try not to force it too hard, because they do sell a slide hammer that helps you clip right underneath this clip and then pull it out. I would not recommend putting any pry bars or anything against the differential, but I mean, anyways, just let me put this camera aside and we'll show you how it comes out. So you should just simply have to push the axle all the way in and swiftly just give it a nice tug, a couple of times maybe, and it comes out just like that. And make sure you got a drain pan underneath. And I happen to get the drain pan just right this time. If you've ever followed my channel, I make messes on the floor all the time. I'm actually proud of myself. I got it right in the center. That's pretty cool. So there you go. That's one axle. And yeah, I don't know. This thing's definitely got a little bit of play. But this machine has 1,200 hours on it. So kilometer wise, I think it's somewhere near 14,000 kilometers. I don't remember exactly, but I just checked the hours for replacing the engine oil. And yeah, it's at 1,200 hours. So that's quite a bit of use. And let's clean that up. We'll clean up the seal. We're going to give it a little bit of grease. We're going to put the new axle in. Okay, so I don't know if you guys see that exactly. I'm going to put a little bit of light on. But right here, I've got a mark, like it's gouged right into the frame. And there's nothing on the axle. So I'm not sure what that's all about. It doesn't have a lift. Because sometimes people have to gouge out stuff like that to give room or space for the axles to travel when you have a lift kit, but this doesn't have a lift kit. I wonder if is the other side like that? I know it's a little bit hard to tell, but right there you would see the same markings, but we don't have that. So I don't know if anything got caught in there at one point. Okay, so all I'm doing here is I'm just going to use a very light amount of parts brake cleaner, trying not to get too much inside. I just want to clean the seal because that cup is going to ride on this seal, and that's what prevents some of the dirt from making its way in. This is the actual sealing component, but this outer seal helps a lot of dirt from making its way into the sealing component, and I want to make sure that works really well. We're installing some HD axles, so heavy duty, and as you can tell, obviously the new one on the left is definitely much beefier than the original axle on the right. Now I only have one concern right now, and that is that this one here definitely has a longer collar than the original, so hopefully that's not a problem when I install it. It seems to be the same length. Maybe it's just to add some travel, but we're going to find out in a minute. But one thing I like to do when I install them after I clean up that seal is I will lubricate the inside of the cup here. I'll put a little bit of grease inside here and a little bit on the splines, and she'll slide right in. Alright, so let's slide this new axle back in, and we're going to go back in the way it was, not underneath. That would have been silly. Again, like I said, I've got a little bit of grease inside that cup, and you just have to simply line up the splines and push it in place. Just like that. And of course, the assembly is the reverse of what you saw. Okay, so we've got it all greased up, all put back together, fresh cotter pin. All that's left to do is do the other side, put it back together, and go for a ride. Before we take this thing out for a rip, I highly recommend you replace the differential oil. And one thing you should do also is make sure that you crack this fill port first before you go down here after the plate is removed, the skid plate, and then you start to drain it over here. I'll tell you why. I said it in the previous video on the Big Bear. I had a hard time removing the fill port, so that could have been a really bad day if I didn't get it off. But anyways, let's drain this out. We'll pump some new fluid in, then we'll go for a ride. Alright, every last drop is out. Oh, maybe that one. Now it's done. There are many methods to filling a rear differential, but I find that this is probably the easiest and least messy way of doing it, using one of these little pumps. And when the oil flows out of the top, or the bottom I should say, from the top, you know it's full. Alright, so we got it outside. Let's fire this up and let's do a sharp turn here in the yard. Don't have too much room, but we'll make it work. Okay. Normally when you turn to the left, it was the worst. This wheel was making a big crunching noise, so let's see if it happens again. Crunching on this side, so let's flip it around. Let's try the other side. Okay, now let's listen for the right side. I don't hear no crunching. Well, that's awesome. Perfect. I love it. That's going to do it for today's video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you found it informative or you liked it, please consider subscribing. It really means a lot to me. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.